Tanya, welcome to the Visionary Life podcast. I'm so excited to have you on the show. I know when I was chatting with some of the team in the town of Bracebridge, they kept mentioning your name. They said, you need to connect with Tanya. She'll be a perfect guest on the show. So I'm very, very excited that we get to sit down together today. So thank you for being here and welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Let's dive in with a few quick fire questions so that the listeners can get to know who Tanya is. So, number one, where did you grow up?
I grew up in Bracebridge, the town that I'm living in now. I probably stayed here till the end of high school, and then I did a whole bunch of other things and moved back just recently, probably like 6, 7 years ago.
Did you ever envision like settling down in Bracebridge as a kid, or did you always think, I'm just going to get out, get away, move somewhere different?
Oh, I couldn't wait to get out. Like, I grew up in an era before, computers and cell phones, and we just like it was a very small town. I remember when we grew up, we didn't even have a McDonald's until I was probably 10 or 12 years old. So it was just I was ready to get out when I was 19, because like back then we had OAC. So I moved to Whistler for 4 years and then did nothing but ski, snowboard, and party. It was pretty awesome. And then I don't know, I traveled all over Ontario. And then somehow I managed to come back here. Like I realized that I kind of grew up in the best place, if you ask me, in Ontario. But I didn't know it at the time until I left.
That's exactly it, right? You don't know what you have at the time, but then you probably missed it so much living in a bigger city after that, thinking, wow, I really do now appreciate that nature and that special magic that Bracebridge had. So that's really cool that it came full circle and brought you back there. I'd love to know, what's the first thing you do every single morning?
Oh, 100% is drink coffee.
Yeah. All
I
business owners say that.
I wake up. It was the one thing when we knew we were moving back up here, we were like, we need to get an espresso machine because we were lucky when I lived in Toronto. That's where we came before, or lived, sorry, before we moved here. We had this cute little Portuguese bakery at the end, and they had really amazing coffee. So we would go there all the time. But when we knew we were moving here, I was like, we need good coffee. So that's the first thing I do is go get a coffee, and then I sit down and I literally don't move until my coffee is done. Even if my
Mhm.
daughter's awake, I'm like, mommy's not finished her coffee yet. Like I have to just sit there and drink my coffee for about 15, 20 minutes before I can actually do anything.
Oh, I am the exact same way. It is just the best way to start a day. What would you say is one of your greatest accomplishments, both in life and then greatest accomplishment in business thus far?
Hmm. Well, life, obviously, having my daughter. Okay. My hubby's pretty awesome too.
Oh,
Yeah, like we've got a good little family here, and not just like our little family that we have, it's just the three of us. I'm pretty lucky. I've got really great friends. My parents only live 2 minutes away, and my sister lives 2 minutes away. I've got another
wow.
sister, but she lives in Ottawa. So we're very social people. There's always somebody at our house. So I'd say that's pretty awesome, like personally. And business wise, like I find I've finally kind of gotten to the point where life and work has a bit more balance. Do you know what I mean? Like it took a long, long time to get there. I mean, I still work a ton in the summertime. Like I usually work 60 to 80 hours a week in the summertime. But, but in the wintertime, I only work 20. Do you know what I mean? So I get to kind of make up for it in the wintertime. So
And I
since
think
then,
that's one
yeah,
of the perks of being a business owner is, you get to make your own schedule. And yeah, sometimes there are seasons of hustle. Sometimes there are seasons where it's quiet, but we thrive on that as entrepreneurs, right? Knowing that there is always going to be kind of that balance at the end of the year.
totally. Yeah. As long as
Um,
I know there's like a short time, like if I'm like, okay, I got to work hard for till, this point, then I know I can do it. And then I take a break. It's awesome.
mhm. How would you describe the town of Bracebridge if you had to describe it in just one word?
It's quaint.
Quaint. Oh, I love that word. So cute. All right, Tanya, why don't we zoom the lens back a little bit? I know you've had quite the journey moving from the big city of Toronto and now living in smaller town Bracebridge. Could you kind of paint us a picture of what you were up to while you lived in Toronto, and take us back to that point in your life?
I did really enjoy living in Toronto. When I first moved there, I was single. So I had a lot of single girlfriends. And then I think I would have been 30. I opened up a flower shop with my best friend. And I think I owned that for 6, 7 years. And in that time, I met my husband and had a child. And I just realized when she was a year old, I was like, I don't want to live here anymore. So it's not where I wanted to raise her. And, you know, the shop that I had was on College Street. So it was right downtown. And we lived in Etobicoke and it was too much driving. So that's when I think it was one conversation I had with my husband, Ryan. I'm like, okay, we either have to move downtown so I'm not doing all this driving, or we have to move out of the city. And he's a small town guy too. So he's like, let's get out. So we just knew we were leaving.
Mm-hmm. What possessed you to want to open a flower shop? Like, was that what you studied in school? Did you know you wanted to be an entrepreneur? Did you just stumble into this opportunity?
I kind of a little bit of all of that. I started working at a garden center here in Bracebridge. I guess I would have been early 20s. So when I did my days in Whistler, I had my winters in Whistler and then my summers here in Muskoka. It's pretty
Nice.
okay. And so I remember coming back here and I got a job working at a garden center. And I thought for a time I wanted to do landscaping. I was like, oh, that'd be a really fun job. And then you only have to lay sod once in the pouring rain, and then you're just like, I feel like this is just not my cup of tea. And they also had a flower shop there, and I remember watching some of the girls doing like the flowers and everything, and so I was like, oh, I think maybe that's what I want to do. Like I liked plants, I like flowers, I like colors, and so I ended up going to school at Humber College, and they had a floral design program there. It was a year and a half, and it was really awesome. Like I'm glad I went. I learned a lot and it was fun. And I also got to play basketball while I was there too. It was super fun.
Amazing. Did you see the opportunity to turn that into your own business, or did you think you were going to go work for an existing floral shop? What was your vision when you graduated from college?
I don't think it was ever really to own my own business. Like right at the beginning anyways. I was also on the side, um, doing a lot of sewing. Like I used to have a business where I took like all recycled materials, like ties and belts, and I made them into handbags. And I did the one of a kind show, and I did all that like way back in the day. This is like before I was even a florist. And I think that kind of like, so I had that side of it, but that was always a part-time job. And I kind of knew that wasn't going to be my full-time gig for some reason. And then I ended up working for a couple of flower shops and I learned a lot. And then I just was like, well, I'm already running the store, like doing everything. Like maybe I should just do it for myself. So I did.
So you did. Did
Yeah.
entrepreneurship run in your family? Did you know a lot of entrepreneurs at the time?
My dad had his own business. So I saw him. My dad's a very hardworking man. He's very smart, very hardworking. And I think I got my work ethic from him. Like actually my mom's very hardworking too. They both never sit still kind of a thing. But yeah, no, it was cool watching my dad grow up.
Yeah, that probably planted a seed in your mind for what was possible in pursuing your own path. So, what was that first year like of owning your own floral shop in downtown Toronto? Was it challenging? Did it go really well? Was everything according to plan? How did it go?
We were really lucky. When we opened up, it was called Pink Twig, which is actually still there. My friend that I opened it up with, she still owns it. And she's doing amazing. Like we opened it up and we just looked at each other and I think we didn't know any different. You know what I mean? We're like, yeah, we're just going to open up our own flower shop and we're going to make money and whatever. Right. Like we just kind of really didn't think about it not working. Right.
Yeah.
And there's so many things that could have gone wrong. Like looking back on it, I was like, oh my God, I had balls back then. But really we were just lucky. my dad believed in me a ton, and he lent us the money to open it up because no bank would give us any money because we were both 30 years old and never owned a house. I had like a crappy car. Do you know what I mean? I had nothing to like prove my worth to the bank. So thank God, like my dad, like actually was like, yeah, I think you guys can do it and blah, blah, blah. And we were lucky, like within the first year we were making money, which
Mm-hmm.
doesn't happen, I know, to a lot of businesses. I think we just got in right at the right time.
Mm-hmm.
Like a
And
lot of people didn't even have websites back then. Like this is like, I think it was 2006. I think we opened it up.
mhm. So how were customers hearing about the flower shop? Like obviously you had a physical space, so I'm assuming you got some walk by traffic, but how did you get customers? How did people find out about this shop?
We just worked really hard. Like I remember like emailing every single friend that I've ever met. Do you know what I
Yep.
mean? Any person I was like, oh yeah, I own a flower shop, like handing out business cards like crazy. And we were really lucky we got into magazines, which back then was really the only way you could get your product out there. Like there was no Instagram, there was no Facebook, there was none of that. And I remember if you got married, like if you were getting married, you would go to the Shoppers Drug Mart and you would pick out like one of 4 magazines, right? And we just got into all of those 4 magazines and people would be like, oh, there's a flower shop. Do you know what I mean? Like we ended up striking it rich with going into the magazines, I think, which was awesome.
Mhm. And I think like you can't discount the fact that you said you emailed like every single person you know because so many people they're shy about sharing their business and they don't want to bother their friends and family, but the truth is those are going to be your first few supporters. Like those are the
Oh,
people you need to be telling so that they can spread the word on your behalf, right?
oh yeah. Like if it wasn't for friends and family, and like I still remember like, when we were struggling, my mom would come down with like food. She would have like soup and apple crisp and she would sweep our floors for free. Do you know what I mean? Like if it wasn't for my friends and family, I wouldn't be here. That's for sure.
100%. So you run this shop, you come to kind of your end and decide to leave the big city to move back to Bracebridge. What was your plan in how were you were going to transition your career? Like, did you know you would then open up shop in Bracebridge or were you just going to take some time off? Talk about that moment of deciding to make such a big shift in life and in business.
Yeah, well, I knew that I was definitely gonna do flowers when I moved up to Bracebridge, but I didn't know really in what capacity. I was like, okay, I'll start working from home and I'll try just do weddings and events. And if that doesn't work, well, then I'll open up a store and then I'll have again like a physical space and then I can just do everyday business. The only issue is that I was trying to do more of the work-life balance. And the problem with the store is that you're open even when you're not busy. So it's like you have to be open. Like, and that's one of the reasons why Twig did so well in Toronto is because we were open from 9 to 7. No one was ever late. We never just decided, oh, we're not going to open today because it's sunny. Do you know what I mean? Like we were there every day, every minute, never without fail. Like, and I was just like, and it was a lot. It's very taxing on having to be open 10 hours a day.
Yeah.
So I knew I didn't really want to do that when I got back. So I was like, I'll just do weddings and events. So again, when I got here, I'm like, I'm just going to email every wedding planner, every chair person that I know, like any like rental company, anything, and just be like, hey, I'm in Muskoka. If anybody is like looking for a florist, blah, 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 right?
Yeah.
And it worked. Like I still work with, it's almost the exact same people that I worked with in Toronto, but just up here in Muskoka. And
Mhm.
I knew there was a need for more florists in Muskoka because while I was in Toronto, we used to come up here quite a bit, like to do weddings.
Yeah.
So I did already know that there's just not that much choice up here. And a lot of the florists up here we're just doing smaller weddings. And my kind of thought process was like, I want to do the bigger weddings, do less of them and do like some of the bigger weddings. So it just magically worked out, thank goodness.
With probably a lot of hard work as well. So you move up to Bracebridge. Like, did you establish a physical shop when you moved there? Did you
Nope.
bring everything to be out of your house? How did that work when you made that transition?
everything we had when we first moved into our house, there was an existing garage. So we turned that garage into like a little studio space for me. And that's still my studio to this day. And I just work from home. Like it's pretty awesome. Like
Mhm.
I'm thinking about for the last couple of years of expanding it, like not doing maybe a space. Honestly, I'm kind of like switching back and forth, but
Yeah.
probably more maybe building a garage where I can have a bigger space
Yeah.
just because again I have so many crafts that I like to do and the pottery, and right now it's all kind of crammed into one space, and I definitely need more space to spread out.
Mhm. So you are obviously a very multi-talented woman. You've had many different career paths. I know you were just explaining before we started recording how you had made the beautiful mug that you were sipping your coffee out of. You've got talents in floral design, and I know you have many other talents. So when somebody asks you, Tanya, what do you do? How do you answer that question today?
I always just say I'm a florist because that's what I know I'm very good at. Do you know what I mean? Like I
Yes.
and then the other things that I do, they're kind of just hobbies. Do you know what I mean? Like I'm like if somebody wants to buy a piece of art that I make, oh sure, that'd be great. Okay, but I don't really try to sell them. Does that make sense? Or like
Yeah.
in my mugs, like there's like I don't really try to sell them so much as I just really like to make them. And
Yeah.
if I were to keep everything that I made, I would be a hoarder. So it's more like just trying to get rid of most of it and maybe just recoup enough costs that I could just buy more supplies, kind of a thing.
I love that. So florals are the kind of predominant portion of your
Oh,
business today, but all your other passions are just supplementary, right? Like you love creating them and probably love sharing them equally as much. And somebody wants to become a buyer of one, it's like, okay, well, yeah, that can be part of my business too.
really? Well, it's like even the pottery. I'd only ever taken a couple classes. I learned from some really fantastic women, and then I bought a wheel. I guess it would have been sometime at the end of last summer, but I didn't have any time to use it until probably November or December. So all of this pottery that I've been doing is just since like COVID hit. Like I haven't. I was just like, well, I've got like a month, because at first I didn't think it was going to last this long and all this stuff. And anyways, we were kind of on hold. We were doing renovations at another house that we own. And when all this happened, like everything was shut down. We couldn't get the supplies. So I was like, well, I'm just going to do some pottery. So I honestly just put a couple of long days in a pottery and just realized how much I love it. So this is a very new passion.
Hmm. Being that you have a lot of creative energy that I feel like is within you, I'm wondering, where do you get that creative energy from? Like, do you have certain rituals or routines, or are there places around town that you find inspiration, or have you been born with this? Like, where do you get that?
Um, well, my mom is very creative and hardworking. Like she's always just had a good eye for everything.
Hmm.
So I think I was born with it a little bit, but I didn't even know I was creative until like I was in my 20s. Like even in high school, I never took a single art class. Like I never learned how to do anything. Like it's all I remember once just going to an art store and seeing this giant canvas. It was like the biggest one you could get. So it was probably like 60 inches by like 50. It was like massive. Okay. And it was on sale because it had some sort of like a black mark on it. I'm like, I'm just going to buy it. Okay. So I struggle with this giant canvas. I've never painted anything before in my life, but I decided I'm like, I'm going to buy the biggest canvas in this place. Okay. And I had it in my studio or like in my studio apartment, like not studio, just like this little apartment that I lived in Toronto. And I looked at it for a year and I was just like, what am I going to do with this? Anyways, so I had to paint it. And I don't know. I think you just look around and I just see beautiful magazines. And I've got like one of my best friends, she's an interior designer and she just can sew anything. Do you know what I mean? And there's like a space downtown Bracebridge called the Annex where I sell like my plants and everything there. And it's just really inspiring to go in there and you see so many different artists in there. It's, I don't know, like being in Muskoka, it's very inspiring because there are a ton of artists up here of all walks of life.
Hmm.
This year, actually, I just noticed there's a sign. The Muskoka Arts and Crafts Show is actually closed this year. But as a kid, like we used to walk over there and just see all these amazing artists, all of them from in, within a couple of hours of Muskoka. It was pretty amazing.
Mm-hmm. I've been having this conversation a lot lately of like how to activate that creative energy as an entrepreneur. And I think that one thing, me personally, that I'm lacking is doing projects that involve my hands, like painting or like doing pottery. And I just think that it's something that as kids is really exciting to us. And we get the opportunity in school, or our parents put us in certain after school programs. But then as an adult, things got really serious, like spending my days on my computer and on my phone. And I'm kind of thinking like, where am I channeling my creative energy that's not into my business? Like, what can I do to just activate something totally different and maybe reignite a hobby that I had as a kid, like painting, but reignite it in my adult years? So I think it's a really fun conversation because I do believe we all have creativity within us. Like when someone says they are not creative, I think that they just need to go buy that blank canvas and see what happens, right? I mean, you can't
Agree.
mess it up, can you?
I'm like, you're like, oh, it's so big, and I don't really want to. I'm like, just paint over it if you don't like it. Like half of my paintings that I have made were probably two or three other things before. Like I've made some really ugly stuff. I just don't show anybody those things. Okay, like you just have to, and it's trial and error, right? Like you just sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, and if it doesn't work, you just have to get over it and then just
Mhm.
try something else.
Do you try to instill that type of creative energy and mentality into your daughter? So, do you have rituals or routines that you pass along to her?
Reid made this
What?
painting. Yeah.
I was actually going to ask you if you did that. So, for the listeners who are watching this on YouTube, you can see, but if you're listening on the podcast, Tanya has this beautiful piece of art behind her, which I thought you did. So, tell us about that.
Yeah, no, she just would watch me do things. So I went through this stage here. I'll just see if I can show it to you again, where I was painting
Wow.
faces. Okay. And so she painted this face. And this is her monkey that she carries around everywhere with her. So that's her little monkey. And then she glued some gems on it and some earrings. And she's just like, "Your mom." And I was like, "Oh my God." I'm like, "It's prettier than mine." Do you know what I mean? Like,
And how
and
old
she,
was she when she did this?
well, she's only 8 now. So she's probably 6 when she did that.
Wow.
Yeah. She's very, very creative. Like we actually have my sewing machine is in her bedroom right now. And she'll just go in there. Like even like yesterday morning, she sewed for 2 hours before she even ate breakfast. Like she just wants to make stuff. Like she's always like, "Mom, I have all these ideas in my brain. I have all these ideas in my brain." And I'm like, "Go do it. Like just clean it up after you're done." Okay. That's what I have to say.
That is so cool. Is there one type of art or some sort of creation that you haven't yet made yet that you would like to learn more about, whether that is like watercolors or just something that you haven't explored that's on your mind?
It's funny. My husband the other day is like, "You should learn to do glass blowing." And I was like, "Yeah."
Oh,
It's kind of a little scary, like with all the flames and everything, but I'm like, I think that's something that I would like to try. But right now, because I already have too many hobbies, I'm I'm not allowing myself to learn anything else. I'm like the amount of time and energy and money I have spent on all of my hobbies, I'm like, I gotta scale it down.
mhm.
Okay.
It's a good problem to have
Yes,
too many hobbies, I think.
totally.
I'm wondering for a business owner who's listening to this, who feels like they have kind of lost their creative energy or they're just not finding time to activate it. Do you have any advice for how they could reignite it?
Hmm. Hang out with kids, honestly. Like they just do what they want to do and they're not like, "Oh, I'm going to do that later." Do you know how like a lot of us are like, "Oh, I'm going to learn how to paint later. I'm going to learn how to do pottery later." They're like, "Let's do pottery now. Like, let's do painting now." So Reid, who's my daughter, and then her best friend Briar, like they'll come over and they'll just be like, "Okay, we want to go just do something, Tan. Like, let's go make some clay." And I'm like, "All right, let's go." Like they want to do it right then and now, and they'll finish it. Like they don't really stop until they're done,
Mhm.
which I love.
That's So fun. I love that advice to just hang around with kids and go play with them, right? You're bound to do something fun, unique that you haven't done in a while. So I think they can teach us a lot as children.
Yeah, or like even just sign up for a class. Like we're always saying, like myself included, like we don't have enough time to do it. We don't do this, blah, blah, blah. But like, you know, at 6 o'clock at night when you get home from work and you have your dinner and you sit on the couch, well, make yourself go do a class. Do you know
Yeah.
what I mean? It's the annex, like the space that I have the plants and everything. They do tons of adult classes there. So you can
Oh,
do painting, you can do watercolors, you can do pottery, you can do paddle painting, whatever. Like they've kind of got something for everybody there. So even if you're not creative, you just want a night out, like sign up with a bunch of lady friends and go see if you like it. Do you know what I mean?
yeah. I love that idea.
Yeah.
So, being that we're recording this, what is it, June 19th, 2020, we've just gone through some of the craziest few months, I think, as people living with this collective global experience of COVID-19. I'm wondering, what does a typical day look like for you right now?
Well, right now, it was really fun the first couple of weeks
Yeah.
of COVID. Okay. Like, because I was like, it's kind of like a vacation. Like, you get to hang out with your family. I did lots of pottery, blah, blah, blah. But then it kind of hits. Like, it was probably like a month into it. And I was like, okay, well, now what? Do you know what I mean? Like, I run a wedding business, and it was all of a sudden there's no weddings for the summer. And then I'm like, oh, okay. At first I was like, well, I get a summer off. I haven't had a summer off since I was in grade 9. Okay. So I was like, that'd be great. And then you're like, okay, then you look at your bank account. Do you know what I mean? And you're
Oh,
just like,
yeah.
and you start to stress out about that, right? And then I'm like, oh, okay, well, I'm gonna start to sell more plants. I'll sell some pottery. Like, there's always ways to do it. Like, but my typical day, I would say, is like it changes because right now, Ryan and I, we still have a week left of teaching Reid homeschooling, which, P.S., I'm not a teacher. Don't ever want to be. Okay.
How's that going?
Need to get paid more money. Okay. That's what I'm going to say. Um, Rye, thank goodness, has got a lot more patience than I do. And he's kind of done more of it than I would say that I have. But
Yeah.
I'm still there, and our daughter is 8, so she can't read on her own. So we basically have to sit there for 3 hours while she's doing her homework
Yeah.
and help her do all of the problems or reading, or she's in French immersion. Try to read French. I can't read French. Okay, it's terrible. I'm horrible. Anyways, it's been trying. Nothing seems to get done. Do you know what I mean? And if you want to do one thing, I find it takes like 17 steps to do one thing now. Because we were, as I mentioned before, we're doing renovations at, like, we own another rental house, which Kayleen, whom you know, lives there.
Yeah.
And so we have like the apartment up top that's finished, but the apartment downstairs needs to get done by the 1st of July. And we were like, oh, we got tons of time, we got this, but going to find drywall. There's no drywall anywhere in Bracebridge. Trying to find someone to go do the drywall. Oh yeah, no, we're sorry, we're not working because of COVID. And I'm just like, it's been very frustrating just trying to get anything done.
Yeah.
Anyways, we're almost done, so it's good. But I find the days are every day. Ryan and I just sit there with our coffee and we're like, okay, what do we got to do today?
What do we do?
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Every day is completely different, and we're just trying to make it through to the end of this.
Yeah, I think a lot of people could echo that sentiment that, like, it's been a roller coaster ride, that's for sure. And not everything has gone according to the plan, especially as business owners. Like, there are things that have been out of our control, but at the end of the day, all we can do is adapt and pivot. And I love to hear that you're kind of focusing on other projects, right? And just shift that energy elsewhere, and continue to plant seeds for the upcoming months. We don't know when will all be over, but we can keep at it and keep connecting and networking and, again, doing things that'll set us up for success in the coming months. So I think that's
Yeah. And I do think that for a lot of people, this is going to like make their businesses better. I feel like it's going to, like, you're going
yeah.
to learn more going through it. Like, I remember when it was probably a couple weeks before Mother's Day, and I didn't have an online store. Like, I don't ever want an online store. I was like, oh, it's too much work, blah, blah, blah. But I had all these plants, and I was like, no one can come into the annex to see these plants. I'm like, I better, if I want to sell them, I have to
Yeah.
make an online shop. So I did. Do you know what I mean? So I've learned something. I've learned how to do that, and it's working quite well. And, I've learned how to do pottery. So maybe I can incorporate that now into weddings. I'm like, now I can offer, oh, I can make your vases for your wedding as well, right? Like I think there's just so many different things you could do. And
Yeah.
I think you have to get creative. So like even if you're saying there's people that say they're not creative, well, you have to at this point, because you can't just stick to the same old path, because it's not going to work right now.
No. And I love that you brought that up, that you didn't intend to ever have an online store, but sometimes we are forced to adapt, forced to pivot, forced to switch up the original plan that we had in favor of meeting the demands of what the world currently wants from us. And I know it's not easy to get these online e-commerce stores up and running, but if you want to stay afloat, like that is the logical next step. And I'm sure your customers appreciated that, right? I'm sure they loved being able to access your creations online.
Totally. And it's and I'm not computer like oriented at all.
Yeah.
So just throw this out there to anyone who's like on the fence. Oh, should I have one? Should I not? Like, if I can do it, honestly, anybody can do it. Like it was surprisingly easier than I thought.
Yeah.
It was just time consuming. Like you had to take, all the pictures of all the products and,
Yeah.
kind of tweak them to lighten them up and whatnot. But besides time, it wasn't that difficult to do.
Mm-hmm. And so, aside from people finding you through your website or your online shop, what have been some of the ways that you've continued to market or advertise your business through times of COVID when we're not really leaving our homes and connecting with people face to face? Like, what are the strategies you've been using, or have people just organically been finding out about you?
It's just, honestly, Instagram has been the
Huge.
best tool
Yeah.
ever since I've been on Instagram, which is basically kind of the time that we moved to Muskoka from
Yeah.
Toronto.
Yeah.
I don't know, is that 6, 7 years ago? I can't
That
remember.
was when it hit it big. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't remember. And I only advertised, I think maybe the first couple of months I was here in Bracebridge. And then after that, I have never paid for a drop of advertising since then. Because everyone's like, oh, I found you on Instagram. I found you on Instagram. I found you on Instagram. And I'm just like, why pay for it if it's there? And then I can put on when I want it, what I want on there. It's like, when I first started this business, like back in Toronto, it was like you had to have like a certain picture and it had to be in a magazine and you never knew what page it was going to be on. And, magazines only came out 2 times a year at that point. Like, you had a
Yeah.
spring, winter, and then a fall, summer, whatever one. But now I can do it whenever I want. Like I'm in control of the advertising.
Yeah, that's the cool thing. And anybody can have a voice and anybody can have a platform at the click of a button and at the post of a photo, right? You can share your gifts and your creations with an unlimited amount of people, which is pretty special.
Yeah.
I know you sell out of a shop or more than one shop in Bracebridge?
Just one,
Just one.
the annex. And
Yeah.
I don't do flowers there because there's no refrigerator, but
Yeah.
I do lots of plants and then some pots and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. How did you form a partnership with that shop? I think a lot of people, they would love to be able to share their creations with an existing store, but they have no idea how they would ever make that partnership happen.
Well, the girl Andrea that owns it, um, she's pretty amazing. Yes, you might want to talk to her.
Noted.
She like has this large space downtown Bracebridge, and she wanted it to kind of be. It was her idea, her vision. She wanted it to be a bunch of different businesses kind of running out of it. So right now, there's what's called the Wild Arts Creative, and I think it's 11 or 12 artists that share the space, and then plus myself that does the plants, and then Andrea that runs the annex. She also has a business called Let the Cat Go, and that's who teaches like all of the painting and the pottery and all that stuff too. So she's at the back there, and it was kind of her vision. And she's like, "Hey, do you want to do some plants?" And I was like, "Sure, okay." Like
Hmm.
it kind of she's just a friend, and
Yeah.
I really didn't think too much about it. I was like, "Sure, that sounds great. Like, why
Yeah.
not?" Right?
Yeah. I
Doesn't
love
work.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it's great so far.
Having good connections is so important, right? Knowing your fellow community and connecting with the amazing individuals who own shops, I think is something that you just can't overlook. Like, you can't live in your own little silo as a business owner in a small town. You need to be meeting people and getting to know fellow business owners, but just community members as well, because you never know where those opportunities could pop up.
No, I'm a firm believer. Like ever since I was young, like things have kind of fallen into place somehow. Not because I sat at home and did nothing. Do you know what I mean? I was always out. I was a very social person. It's, you know, I always say you party with the right people and this is what happens, right? Do you know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like you get to just know them like on a personal level and they're like, oh, well, Tanya, doesn't she do flowers? Okay. And
Yeah.
then they recommend you to a friend and all of that. It's all just, word of mouth basically.
Mm-hmm. The power of relationships. Yeah. And word of mouth, which sounds like it's been a vital strategy in growing your business, is just having people talk about you because they had an excellent experience, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's been, I couldn't have done it without it. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm. I would love to know a few Bracebridge specific questions that I can ask you. So, first one, tell us why you love Bracebridge. Like, what is it about this magical little town 2 hours north of Toronto? What is it that you love about it?
I guess I've always loved it. We're living in a subdivision right now. It's actually the subdivision that I grew up in, believe it or not. Like we
Wow.
live in the same street that I grew up in. My parents don't live on this same street anymore. They live on a different street, but it's the cutest neighborhood. Like everybody knows everybody. Like, you know, none of the houses are matching. Do you know what I mean? Like they're all different houses and they're not, I don't know. And I find it's a bunch of different people. Like it's not just people that grew up here. Like another one of my best friends, like she's not from here. She's a professor at Western University and she commutes back and forth to Western. Do you know what I mean? Like a lot of like my husband is a pilot out of Pearson Airport. And so he drives to work every day. Like people just come here to live here because it's that awesome. Like
Mm.
there's most of what you need is here. Like there's a couple of things that I wish we had, but other than that, like you make do with what you've got. Like we've got some really great restaurants. We've got some great shops downtown Bracebridge, and the surrounding towns are fantastic too. Like you got Bala, you got Port Carling, you got Huntsville. Like there's so many great towns surrounding it. Like
Mhm.
I don't plan on ever leaving.
Mhm. What advice would you have for somebody who maybe they want to start a business in Bracebridge or maybe in a small town that they live in? What advice would you have for them if they are feeling like, who's going to be able to shop my product, or are there enough people, and they're really getting stuck in that the town's too small to support my business? What would you say?
It's, it's a valid point. But the thing is that there are so many people that pass through here, as well as like I think the town has, I want to say 15, 16,000 people. But in the summertime, I believe we go up to like in the Muskoka area, I think it goes up to like 100,000 plus. Like there's a lot of people that have cottages up here. And I feel like if you have a good store, you have good products, and you're there, you're open, you're not closed, you don't have wishy-washy hours, you don't only have half a store filled with stuff. Like you have to have the whole store filled with stuff. Like I feel like as long as you've got a good product, you can sell it anywhere, if you ask me.
Hmm.
Um,
That's true. Yeah.
but it's it, I feel like people like there's a lot of people, especially now that COVID has hit. Like I remember when it first hit, I was like, oh my god, our house is going to be worth like half the amount of money. Da, 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 da. Not in Bracebridge. The houses here are overpriced, in my opinion, because there's so many people moving from Toronto now up to Muskoka because they're like, if they were ever on the fence, like, oh, I don't know if I want to live in Toronto, blah, blah, blah anymore, they're coming up here. Like, I've got a couple of friends that are real estate agents right now. They are run off their feet, like just trying to like find houses and whatnot. Like, there's a house on my street that's like, quite frankly, it's like, it's a nice house, but it's like, I think it's $200,000 over what it's worth. Do you know what I mean? It's like, so there are people from Toronto moving here that have the money to go spend on stuff is what I'm trying to get at. Do you know what I mean? Like there's a lot of city people that need those other things. And I feel like you could make a go of almost anything up here right now.
Yeah. And yeah, that's the one thing that is very unique about Bracebridge and the Muskoka towns is that there's such a great seasonal population that comes up there and is ready to spend money. So, yeah, there might be a few months that are quote unquote, lower seasons, but I think the high seasons can probably make up for that, especially if you get over that mindset block of, well, it's slow in the winter. Well, do something to overcome that, right? Like get creative with your marketing. You have to challenge yourself to overcome those objections that might be present in your mind if you want to get into this as a business.
Yeah, and they're also like the town of Bracebridge is actually doing a great job of trying to get people up here in the wintertime. There is, in my opinion, there's actually more things to do up here in the winter than there is in the summer. Like the cross country skiing is amazing up here. There's downhill skiing, there's snowmobiling. Like it's so beautiful up here with the snow. Like even if you don't do any of those things and you just want to get out of the city, you want to sit in front of a fireplace and just have some peace, it's perfect. Like
Yeah.
it's endless the amount of stuff you can do up here in the wintertime. They've all these outdoor skating trails up here now. Like, there's one in Algonquin Park where you skate through the trees. And then there's another one in Ballot, the Cranberry Marsh there, where you skate around this giant oval. It's unbelievable the amount of stuff you can do here in the winter.
It's amazing. Now, I know a lot of the listeners, after listening to this series with Bracebridge, they're going to want to come visit and they're going to want to plan a couple days to tour the city and get to know it. Do you have any hidden gems or favorite spots or places to visit that you would say you must go here if you're going to come to Bracebridge for the first time?
Yeah, Bracebridge has got some great restaurants. Main Street Deli is a great restaurant. All home cooked food. It's delicious. I am gluten intolerant, so there's another place called Beat the Wheat. They have amazing gluten-free products. Oh God, where else to go? Well, of course, the Annex to go visit all the artists. Okay. There's also like in the surrounding towns, like as I always say, like don't just go just to Bracebridge, like go to Port Carling because like they're all around like Muskoka, right? So you've got like you can start in Bracebridge, you can hit up Milford Bay, then you can go to Port Carling, then you can go to Ballard, then Gravenhurst, like kind of go around the loop. It's an hour drive if you were to drive it straight, but you could hit up all the different little towns. And Port Carling is honestly, if I were going to ever open up a shop, that's where I would do it. I love Port Carling. It's the cutest little town. You can like drive your boat right up to like the LCBO. Like where in life can you do that? Okay. It's amazing. Okay. And they have this great taco place called Tulos. And then they've got another, it's like a sandwich shop called York and Mason. And they have the most amazing like grilled sandwiches and they have gluten-free bread there. Like there's just so many places. Huntsville has Belly ice cream. I don't know if you've ever been to Belly ice cream in Huntsville. Worth the drive is all I'm going to say.
Oh my
Homemade ice
goodness.
cream.
Wow. I
Yeah.
will link all of these in the show notes so that if anyone is doing the tour of Muskoka in Ontario here, that they can hit up all those places because I think you're making us hungry and really
Mhm.
want to get out to a restaurant experience ASAP.
Yeah, but the only thing to note when coming up to Muskoka is that a lot of places are closed on Sundays and Mondays, okay? So even restaurants sometimes, like not all, but it's always good to call ahead to make sure, like especially Sundays and Mondays, even Tuesdays could be hit and miss here.
Yeah.
So like I'm not sure what's going on now with COVID, if people are trying to work more or work less. Like I don't know all the hours of all the places yet, but I know like we have a boat and we go out in the boat all the time and trying to find a restaurant sometimes that's open because I work every Saturday. And so I'm usually off Sundays and Mondays can tend to be a little bit trying sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. Call ahead, do your research. But
Yeah,
yeah, if everything's closed, just enjoy the nature up there. Go visit,
totally.
any of the wonders of the falls or just going on a hiking trail. There's so much to offer. So
Oh yeah, you're right. There's so much hiking up here too. It's beautiful.
yeah, so much outdoor stuff that you could do on that Sunday or Monday when everything else is shut down. And I think that's what brings so much magic to Bracebridge is that there's an incredible community of businesses, but you can also just kind of find yourself tucked away in nature, total peace, and it truly is a wonderful escape. So thank you so much for sharing your story and the journey of moving and launching your business in Bracebridge and selling all of your amazing creations. I'm wondering if somebody wants to find out more about who Tanya is and what you do and where they can support your work, where is the best place for them to connect with you and find you?
Probably either just my website, which is just tanyalist.ca, or on Instagram. And I can't remember my Instagram handle. It's probably
That's
Tanya.
okay. You know what? I will plug it in the show notes so that they can simply click through and follow you there and hopefully connect with you if they decide to make a trip to Bracebridge. So, Tanya, thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate it. And I hope you have the best summer up there. And I can't wait to pay my next visit to the town of Bracebridge because you've got me all excited to come explore it a little further. So, thanks for
Oh,
being on the show.
thank you so much for having me. Okay. And have a great day.